everyone, and welcome to Tech Talks. Our IT edition today is focused on ITSI common scenarios. Tech Talks is a series of short webinars that are deep dives for technical practitioners. We value you, our customer, and want to help you continue your Splunk journey. Our experts help create these best practices, and we want to make sure that you're able to leverage them in your daily role. My name is Caitlin Reynolds, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Mike and Joel. Mike, I'll pass it over to you to kick us off today.
Thanks, Caitlin, and thank you for inviting Joel and I to present today. Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Bradbeer, and I'm a consulting solution engineer within Splunk's public sector team here in the UK. And I'm joined by my colleague Joel Schoberg, who is staff advisory engineer here at Splunk. So today I'm going to talk to some of the scenarios we see customers wrestling with, be that service owners or IT operations teams. So common challenges, if you will. And I'll talk to the capabilities of Splunk IT Service Intelligence, or ITSI, and the solutions that it addresses. Then we'll have Joel here do a deep dive demo into multi-cloud monitoring and how to apply that to your service monitoring and event management functions as you build out your own ITSI deployment. So I think it's safe to say that it's no secret, right, that organizations are embracing digital at a rapid pace and scale, whether their IT infrastructure is ready or not. Digital transformation initiatives like migrating to cloud come with new technologies and methodologies, like microservices with continuous integration and continuous delivery or deployment, creating increasingly hybrid, complex environments for us all to support. And traditional IT operating solutions weren't built to support these diverse cloud-driven environments. It just leaves teams with ineffective tools to manage their operations, which simply inhibit their ability to respond at the required speed. So with ITSI, you gain a holistic view of performance across your IT and business services. Of course, we know that Splunk itself enables us with the ability to search and analyze across multiple data sets, right? But then add in ITSI, and that means across multiple layers of the business service and the IT stack. Then you can apply machine learning to your data, which is going to enable you to move from a reactive state of putting out the fires to a predictive and preventative IT posture. Ultimately, we're reducing those costly service impacting outages, reducing your mean time to detect, investigate, and remediate, which I'd say is what it's all about at the end of the day. Of course, we've all got tools across our IT organizations, sometimes more than one for the same job, right? Each team may have something different, and correlating a full joined-up picture is hard. So when I think of the breadth of the needs of IT operations as a practice, I like to look at it as things as like capabilities with outcomes, so common disciplines for success, if you will. So you need the ability to deep dive into raw infrastructure data to investigate and troubleshoot when you see things going wrong. So that's looking at your operating system, application logs, it's syslog from networks, it's authentication data, the list goes on. And this capability leads to overall faster mean time to resolution and faster, more effective root cause analysis. So then we need to increase our observability of our systems and services through the use of metrics and an infrastructure monitoring capability. And that's driving faster mean time to detection by observing your system's behavior through the metrics that they emit. And so, an event management function, right, is crucial to help you manage the storm of alerts and alarms from, no doubt, your many monitoring tools. But when you add in analytics to the mix, you're enabling yourself to reduce event noise and false alerts. And when enriched with service context, you can then easily identify the business impacting problem that needs to be prioritized and addressed first. And my favorite capability by far is service monitoring, as it's enabling you to position IT as a strategic business partner through the use of glass tables and dashboards that map the underlying IT systems to business critical services and their KPIs. And when you add predictive analytics to the mix, you can start to alert teams on future service issues up to 30 minutes in advance. Then more machine learning for adaptive thresholding and anomaly detection to create alert rules and ensure they are consistently updated and accurate. And last up, automation, but crucially orchestrated automation by integrating your multiple systems and tools, your people and your operating procedures through the use of customizable playbooks. So quick fire recap here. Performance and availability through the use of infrastructure and application monitoring. You want to reduce your alert fatigue using intelligent event management. You want that 360 service visibility with joined up business and IT service intelligence across the stack. And you want to prevent those incidents by predictive alerting and auto remediation. So before we look at a couple of the common solutions, let me talk about a couple of success stories for a second. So on the left here, we have a glass table from a major European retail bank who have over 600 critical payment services to take care of. And in using ITSI, they were seeking to achieve 100% service availability and implement predictive analytics. The result, they dramatically increased customer satisfaction and retention. And their next stage is in developing the bank's capabilities towards orchestrating remedial actions. And how about a Fortune 500 company who needed to replace its traditional event management solution? They implemented ITSI to improve their performance and capacity planning and enabling end-to-end service visibility. And the result for them, they reduced their 5,000 daily alerts to just 50 tickets, and in the process successfully aligned multiple teams with their multiple portals with one unified service dashboard. That's just two examples, but it's a common theme for organizations running ITSI. In fact, I'd recommend catching the replay of a webinar from last week where Dell.com talk about how they use ITSI to maintain service operations at critical times like Black Friday. So, how can you get there? And is there any help? Well, first, let me make a shameless plug for our other tech talks in this ITSI series around getting started and tips and tricks. Next, you'll want to be leveraging ITSI content packs, aligned to your specific needs and requirements. These were born as a result of some of the common scenarios our customers face, and so these contain pre-packaged content for you to leverage and get you started. And once installed, these objects within a content pack are completely configurable to your needs. So if you want to do things like change a search's frequency or adjust the latency or change a KPI calculation method, just go ahead and edit that object directly. And most importantly, many content packs include service templates as a way to easily link one of your existing services to the predefined set of KPIs that ship with the pack. So let's take a look at a couple of these in a little bit more detail. First up, VMware. So I suspect you've got some sort of virtualization capability within your organization today. And more than likely, it's VMware, given their dominance in the server virtualization market. And yet, being such a common component to the foundation of organizations' IT services, it's critical to monitor it effectively, but also to understand how the business services that rely on it are impacted, when something goes wrong. Just because the virtualization team, are reporting within their uptime SLA, if there's just that one VM that is down and causing a critical business service to fail, and it's a major issue for the business service owners. So the VMware Content Pack ships with a template service analyzer that we can see here mapped to the example services and predefined KPIs for vSphere, the data stores, the virtual machines, and the ESXi servers that they all sit on. Add the templates have best practice thresholding baked in. So as you can see here, using the template as a building block, we've transformed it into a complex service tree covering an entire VMware service that includes multiple VMware clusters and vCenters. So of course, you still need to onboard the metrics and the event data to support the KPIs that ship with the content pack. So here we're talking about, the performance metrics, that's CPU, memory, disk, etc. It's the VMware inventory data, so that's the configuration items you see when you're in vCenter itself. It's the task and the event data, it's like the alarms and the VM migration events, for example. And of course, vCenter server logs and the ESXi syslog data. So there are a few VMware Splunk add-ons you'll need, which I won't go into now, but there is a great .conf talk that I've shared a link to later in the deck that I recommend that you watch. Now, new in ITSI 4.7 is the content pack for Splunk Infrastructure Monitoring, or SIM for short. This is designed to monitor multiple cloud providers within ITSI. So that's AWS, Azure, and GCP being the most common, right? And today covers the compute and the serverless functions out of the box. The content pack includes the KPIs that monitor those critical functions, as well as correlation searches that fetch events from Splunk infrastructure monitoring for use in ITSI event analytics. And the content pack does require, though, that the new Splunk infrastructure monitoring add-on, which introduces a brand new SPL command called SIM, that's S-I-M, which enables you to query directly from Splunk Enterprise or Splunk Cloud and stream both the performance metrics and events directly from infrastructure monitoring. Also, it provides a modular input so you can index this data too. Oh, and it's important to note that this does not get counted against your license usage. So we're going to get into the meat of things now with the SIM content pack, as really I think it plays to the heart of the majority of IT infrastructure and service monitoring scenarios out there today. And that's organizations running workloads and services in the cloud. So, we've got an ITSI instance here. We've got the SIM content pack installed and configured. So I'll hand it over to my colleague Joel to do a deep dive and showcase its multi-cloud monitoring capabilities and walk you through how to drive your KPIs with metrics powered by Splunk infrastructure monitoring. Joel, over to you, mate.
Okay, after you install the SIM content pack for ITSI, you're going to see a view much like this. By default, the MultiCloud Analyzer will show you the 3 different cloud platforms that are supported, and within those platforms, both compute and serverless functions within each of those different cloud platforms. And this gives you a view of how your cloud is performing, maybe across different providers. What you might do as you get a little more used to this is decide, well, I'm only going to use AWS in this instance, so let me pare that down. And you might have this kind of view that just shows you that cloud platform. Again, only the serverless functions and the VMs are in the content pack by default, right? But a customer may have a more advanced installation of ITSI, and they're going to have a broader view. Sure, they have the cloud as part of that broader view. In this case, this company makes t-shirts, right? They have some on-premises hosts. They have some SaaS platforms. Overall, here is a view that a company may have of that given service of making t-shirts. So in this demo, what I want to show you is adding a new component to this map, adding a new cloud component specifically from the SIM TA. And in that case, it's the AWS RDS instances. And you can see that over here on your infrastructure in SIM. You can see that there is an RDS databases dashboard. And I want to take some of this data out and bring it into that overall view of core Splunk ITSI. And notice that there's a lot of different components that are monitored here. You can take the same logic that I'm going to show you here and apply it to anything else that is in your SignalFX, now known as Splunk infrastructure monitoring dashboards. So in this case, the customers will ask me for something like read IOPS. Let me bring the read IOPS per second as a metric into my overall ITSI view that includes a number of different platforms that may exist. Well, it's pretty easy. You open up the dashboard, then you click on the View Signal Flow button here on the upper right, this link. Now you can view the language that is used to get this data. You can literally copy this signal flow, it's called here, and go over to your core Splunk instance and then use this new keyword called SIM and this subcommand here called flow, which is, we're going to send it a signal flow program, which is what we just copied. And now you're just going to specify the actual query language that is used in the signal flow. And guess what? You just paste it. You just paste what you saw from the dashboard over in your SIM, now known as, formerly known as SignalFX environment. And notice that you're automatically just, getting data back. That's, you pass that signal flow query, it brings data back for you to be able to use within core Splunk and therefore within ITSI. Now I'm going to clean this up a little bit so that you guys can get a good view. I want to call out that you can just cut and paste and start using it, but here's maybe a better view that you might want to see. One is I got rid of some of those calculations, right? Those things such as P90 and P10, and notice that SignalFlow has a special command there called enable equals true. Within each metric, you can enable or disable it. That allows you to do some calculations without actually publishing the data right away. Another thing you can do is you can apply labels to the data that comes back. So in this case, I'm sure I want to have a label that is shown in my core Splunk returns that tells me what this metric is that's coming back. You can apply whatever label you want to that. And so the actual metric may be read IOPS, but maybe I want something like, oh, this is an RDS read IOPS is the label, right? And that shows up down here in the stream label component. All right, so now I've got it narrowed down a little bit to just the IOPS rather than the P90, P10, et cetera. I've also applied a label here to read IOPS. Now I can take this query, see, and create a base KPI search within ITSI. And that's very easy to do. Simply, you just copy that query that you just created, and now you go into your base KPI searches in ITSI. And you can see there are a number here by default. There's those core cloud ones that I showed you earlier. We're going to create a new base KPI search. We're going to name this appropriately. This is Buttercup T-shirts, and I'm just adding some keywords here, some formatting here that helps me understand where this comes from. This is somewhat free form, but it does show up in parts of the UI. So now I've created this name for this base KPI search. Now I have to populate it full of data. In this KPI, I am going to paste that query that we already just executed. And we know this query brings data back. You can click run search to actually run that search. We did just run it, so we know it exists, right? The next set of options here, we're not going to set these. These are by default, but just so you know, you could run it very often. You could run it relatively short-term or even long-term, depending on what data you wanted to get back and how long it was. You could split this by entity. That'll allow you to look at each individual RDS instance. For instance, that's an example, right? We're not going to do that now. That's a little bit more of an advanced topic. We're going to zoom straight down here to adding metric. So in this case, we are just running one search, and we're just going to add one metric. But imagine you could execute a SignalFlow query that gets a large number of metrics back, and you could create multiple metrics within that one base search. So in this case, we are just getting read IOPS, right? We also have to specify what field we're getting that data in. Now, if you go back to the search here real quick, you can see the data that's coming back is in this underbar value field. This is part of the SIM content pack. It boils down the data, the value of each data that comes back into this hidden field. So underbar value is the threshold field we're going to get. IOPS, I just happen to know, is megabytes per second. Sure, you might need to look that up. It is in the metrics dictionary over in SIM if you need to see it. There are some other options here, but we're going to skip those and look at this explanation and just consume that for a second. It's going to take the average of that value over the last 5 minutes, and then it's going to fill the gaps with null values. Pretty straightforward. Now this metric is going to be added here at the bottom. And now you can see that this is a base search. It's going to calculate that metric based on that base search, right? So the next thing you have to do in any content pack is, after you create that KPI based search, is you create a service based on that KPI. So the way you do that is you go over to the services tab, and you can see all the different things that are here that I've created over time. We're going to add a new service here. This is going to add a new dot on that map. So we're going to create a base service, and we're going to call this one Buttercup RDS. Sure. And in this case, yeah, there's a bunch of templates you could use. You could do pre-built KPIs from things like SAI, but we just created this one from scratch. So we're going to manually add this service content. And once you click manual and start to create it, you get a set of tabs here. Now, before, as I mentioned, if you did provide entities to this, yeah, you could You could list them here, and that would give you some benefit on clicking further down into things. Excuse me. And of course, the important part of any service is going to be what is the KPI within that service. That's what we're defining. So we go to the KPI tab, and again, you have some templates that are provided by some of these tooling, but we're creating this from scratch. So we're going to take my generic KPI and create new generic KPI, and we're going to say Buttercup RDS is the name of the service. They give some default naming here, but I'm going to say read IOPS. That is the title that's going to be shown in the KPI. So after you click on that little circle, this is what is going to be shown to you. Go ahead and click next, and you can see that there are a number of options. We are actually going to choose base search because we created that KPI base search already, right? So under the drop-down menu in selecting this, you can see this brand new one that I just created, Buttercup Cloud RDS. That is one of the base searches, right? And then I did create one metric, but I imagine there were a bunch here. You could select each one of these and then decide what you want to get. So in this case, the base search is going to be executed. I'm going to get the read IOPS from that base search. I'm not going to split it by entity this time. That's fine. And you can click next and see some of the options that are there. And again, you get an explanation of the calculation. You can actually click on generated search to execute that search if you really wanted to do so. I'm going to click next, and by default, the base search knows that it's coming in megabits per second. And then I can request no backfill or backfill if I wanted to look at it. And then you set the thresholds. Now, in this case, it's actually going to go out to my core SIM environment, my formerly known as SignalFX environment, and get a bunch of the data in. And you can see this little line down here shows all these bits of data that come in. So notice that most of them are around 4.4, 4.5. So I'm going to add a bunch of thresholds here. Let's just add 3 other ones, low, medium, high, and normal. And remember, it was 1.4, so I'm going to say 1 is low. Well, I'm sorry, 2 is low, and 4 and 8. And so now you can see that the metrics that are coming in from Core SIM are shown here in green. And now it will reflect the color on my service dashboard if those values go too high in this case, all right? So that completes sort of creating that service, right? But you also have to click down here in the right on the bottom, save. So I've created this service. I've added only one metric into this service, but imagine you could add more metrics into this service. And once you click save, then you enable that service. And now, when I go back to my overall view of my ITSI systems, and if I hit refresh, you should see what'll pop up is a new service. And now that new service down here is called Buttercup RDS. Remember, that's what I named it before. Now, this is gray right now. It takes a few minutes for data to trickle through, but once it does start generating, then you'll start to see some really useful information. Hopefully that'll happen before the end of this demo here, because the next step I want to show you is, here's an example of a current service that I've got. The next step is maybe I want to bring in the actual events, and maybe any event that comes in to my SIM environment that is related to the RDS measurements or the metrics that are coming into my core SIM environment, right? That's what we have here. That exclamation point in the center shows that I have a number of critical episodes that have come in based on, in that case, EC2. Let me expand that to RDS. So just so you can see, here's, you look at the episodes that are coming in, and down here in the bottom are all the different episodes that exist, right? I can click on that and look at each individual episode that happens. And when I look at each episode, you can click directly into SPlunk infrastructure monitoring, and that will open up your SIM environment directly onto that specific detected instance and what happened within core formerly known as SignalFX SIM environment, right? So we're going to do the same thing here, but we're going to do it with RDS. It's fairly simple. You go into settings and correlation searches, And you'll notice that here are the other searches that provide those exclamation points. In that case, AWS was one that had fired. So let's add a new one that will connect to RDS. You create a correlation search under the Create New Search menu, and you can call it Buttercup RDS events from SIM. Sure. That is somewhat of a free-form field. You can decide what you want that to be. And then you're going to execute an ad hoc search. So interestingly, you can get very generic when it comes to the SIM command. I'm going to paste in a command here so that you can see. I'm just executing SIM. This time, instead of flow, I'm passing in an event query. And in this query, I'm providing a name value pair. This will bring back any event in my SIM environment that is of the namespace AWS RDS. And so I clicked on search so that you can see what that looks like. I haven't had any events in a while, so let's see what that looks like over 24 hours. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see that I'm getting data back. So over the last 24 hours, I have received anomalous alerts around my IOPS detector that has been fired. That's the kind of correlation search that we want to bring back, and that's what we just tested out. Yes, it's going to work. Now I can set it for 15 minutes or 24 hours like I did before, right? And then maybe execute it every 24 hours. That is an option that you may have here. Now, you can also specify an entity lookup field. That'll let you drill down into a specific entity that you've discovered. And you can also create a notable event based on that. And so we're going to say notable event for RDS detector, sure. And that's just a default with view. You may have more design behind that in terms of creating a correlation policy that understands all these notable events. And as I said before, there's a lot of different options that are possible here that we don't really need to go into detail right now for you as part of this demo. Something that you could get into with your investigation of this platform and to figure out what it does for you. So back on the overall service analyzer view of my overall company. Again, you can see this Buttercup RDS is still there. I have created a correlation search, but it hasn't found any searches anytime recently. And eventually what you'll see is when you click on Buttercup RDS, there we go. Already, we were already started to get a few data points in. Once that fills out, then the service will be able to create an assessment on the red, yellow, or green value of that individual service. So that's the demo today. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's great, Joel. Thank you. So just to wrap up on what we've just covered, I wanted to leave you with some additional resources and specifically call out the blog post here, written by Joel, in fact, and also a few of the .conf presentations from this year. Okay, hopefully you found all that useful. Thanks for listening, and I'll hand it back to Caitlin.
Thank you to Mike and Joel for joining us today. Just as a reminder, you can continue the conversation from today on community.splunk.com, and we'll be sending out the recording and available resources in a follow-up email shortly. Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedules to join us. Please tune back in for future Tech Talks.